It was a difficult weekend for all of the drivers in Belgium. Leclerc got his first win. What is rake and what does it really mean? And this weekend we go to La Pista Magica. That is Monza. Welcome to the PitBox. Motorsport can be a cruel mistress, and to lose a driver is always devastating, of course, to the family and the friends and also to the motorsport community. It's also a stark reminder of the risks that drivers take and the dangers involved in motorsport. It's a very good evening, and we have the full team here. I'm going to start off with Gary Famato. How's it going, Gary?
Yeah, good news. Good to be back.
Nice shirt, eh?
I like it. Nice summertime. Apparently until tomorrow.
Apparently until tomorrow. Gary, it was a difficult weekend. As a driver, a racing driver, you always have the element of risk in your brain. But if you constantly think about that risk all of the time, surely you're not going to be a great racing driver. How do you, as a racing driver, put things into a compartment when it means going racing?
Well, I suppose everybody's got a different way of looking at it. But I mean, from my point of view, you're racing because you love racing. I mean, that's first and foremost. You're there because you love it. That's why you start racing. And if you're lucky enough to succeed and do well, you progress up the ranks. So I don't really think that you're thinking about it often. Yes, of course, if there's something that you are concerned about, a certain corner that may be a bit dangerous, you're going to take note and you're going to mention it. But even having said that, if the corner remains there, you're still going to go and race and drive the car, still try and get the car around the track as fast as you possibly can. So it's not something that you think about all the time. You take the precaution, you do what you can do. There's only so much you can do. But it's not something. If you're going to be scared of it, ultimately, then probably it's not the thing for you to do. Yeah. But it is obviously sad when it happens. You don't want it to happen, and that's why we take the measures that we do to try and make it as safe as possible. And Formula One or any sort of category that within Formula One, GP, or Formula 2 now, Formula 3 racing on the safest tracks in the world, you've got to say the biggest run-off areas, the best medical facilities and personnel available on site at these tracks. Every measure had been put in place.
Yeah, I think you bring up something very important, Vic. When it comes to, and welcome, Vic.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
We'll talk about where you were last weekend, but when it comes to the safety of motorsport, specifically in Formula One, because it is the one that gets shown the most on television, people always talking about it. This was a very unfortunate and freak kind of accident. It reminded me of the accident that Alex Zanardi had in the IndyCar. Just the way the car came to rest and then getting T-boned by somebody else. I mean, correct. The safety measures are incredible when it comes to motorsport. Is there anything else that could have been done, or is it just incredibly unfortunate?
I think incredibly unfortunate. We've seen Formula One progress with the halo. They've got the high side pod sides. We had situations. I think the last fatality was Jules Bianchi, and it was just an unfortunate incident. A lot of guys are saying, "Oh, Rouge needs to have more runoff, etc." But sometimes I think you take away from the mystique of the track. This just happened. It was an unfortunate incident. He went off the circuit. The car came back onto the circuit, and in a way that he had the accident that basically had the incident there. And I don't think it was anything that the marshals could do, anything that the track could do, anything that the FIA could do. The cars are safe, and I think maybe we're a bit blasé about it. We don't realize how dangerous motorsport really is. Yeah. There were a lot of reports that emanated from the track that when the accident did happen, a lot of the drivers were watching and immediately went quiet because they all realized it was a serious accident.
Yeah. Gary, just before you come in, there is talk now at that Radion where the accident happened is now maybe to put a gravel trap, which maybe would have stopped the car from bouncing back. Maybe something to consider, but what was your point?
That's exactly what I wanted to talk about. And I'm going to stick my neck out here on this one, but at the end of the day, the tarmac runoffs have been good in a lot of areas. I've got to say that since we've had the big tarmac runoff area at Eau Rouge, Radion, we've had more crashes there than before, where you knew that if you went off, and I think the guys are maybe a little complacent or maybe willing to take extra risk because, I've got the tar runoff area. When it goes wrong as well. you know, it's one of these things that if it's going to happen, it's going to happen no matter what. Whether the tar runoff area was there, or if there was grass there, or whatever it was. I mean, I went there a very long time ago for the first time. There wasn't any of this extra runoff area, and you know, you crapped yourself when you looked at the corner for the first time. There's no doubt about it. So, yeah, in this case, yes, the tar runoff areas are better. But if you think back, really, you can remember Zanardi's accident from the 90s.
Yeah.
Who else? If you think back there, you got Jacques Villeneuve, I think
Zonta and Villeneuve crashed up there.
Magnussen went off up there.
Yeah.
Many other people. There's been more crashes with it than without it, I've got to say.
Yeah, it's quite crazy. We salute Antoine Hubert and, of course, his family. A very, very difficult time. We'll talk about the younger drivers who are actually incredibly good friends with him as well. And I think that also, wow, it also hits home quite a bit. Listen, we are on live Facebook somewhere along the line. So come and send us your comments also on YouTube as well. You can use the Facebook as well, which is, you can use the Twitter as well, the F1 Sasha handle. If you've got any questions you want to share with us or you want to ask anything, we will gladly get through them during the course of the show as well. There's one thing I wanted to say as well, which is quite amazing. It was 1 day short of 34 years that Stefan Beloff was killed at Spa. Also in a very, very similar position as well. So
at the bottom of the hill, actually.
Bottom of the hill,
Eau Rouge,
into Eau Rouge. Yeah. So a couple of 100 meters away from each other, but it was just, you know, two youngsters, even though Hubert was only 22, Beloff was 27, but two youngsters who unfortunately will never ever know what they could have achieved.
Yeah.
Scary. Okay, so let's have a look at the Belgian Formula One results from this last weekend. What a day it was for young Charles Leclerc getting his first ever victory. And well, one more lap. 44 is Lewis's number, Gary, but if it was 45, he might have had Leclerc's number.
Look, it was a great race, you know, and just to see Leclerc out there, I already sort of feel that he was owed this win.
Yeah.
I think he's been let down a few times with the car. The strategy at Ferrari isn't counted in his favour, but I mean, being in pole position, I think the team looked after him this weekend very well. He was the quicker car. Even Vettel got the call, and it happened for him. So it was great to see. But I think also for Ferrari in general, it was a massive weekend. They needed this win big time. You know, they're having a horrible season. There's no doubt about it. So this was an important Grand Prix to win. And I've got to be honest with you, I didn't expect Ferrari to be that quick at Spa this weekend. I thought it was going to be Hamilton's weekend, but it wasn't the case.
Yeah, I think they did an incredible job with maybe this new downforce package that they had, Vic. They struggled towards the end of the race, especially with the tyres. But prior to that, Sector 2, it was quite amazing that Ferrari were about able to match Mercedes when the tyres were still quite fresh.
Yeah, I think it was an issue. I think you had to decide which way they went. I think Ferrari looked quick in Sector 1 and Sector 3. It was only Charles Leclerc who could match the Mercedes. Sebastian Vettel struggled the entire weekend. He was quick in FP1. But from FP2 onwards, you've got to say Leclerc had his number. He had everyone's number. And I think there was always a 6, 7 tenths gap between first and second the entire weekend. And I think he managed his tyres particularly well. And I think if you looked, I think at the last 2 or 3 laps, you got Lewis got the call from the pits to say Leclerc's tyres are going to fall off just like Sebastian Vettel's, and if it does happen, it's going to fall off a cliff. So I think you're right that one more lap was basically what saved Leclerc, but he was owed it. He's shown glimpses of that pace. It reminded me of the race earlier in the year where he was going very, very well. A spark plug issue caused him that race win in Bahrain. He's the real deal. He's going to be winning races and Formula One World Championships for Ferrari.
Yeah, it was quite amazing. I mean, it was the 71st time that we ever heard the Monaco Grand Prix. Do you know that? Monaco national anthem.
71st time?
71st time. 70 times before the race, and the first time ever.
For a driver.
Because it's the first ever Monegasque driver to win a Formula One Grand Prix. I mean, it's just magical for this young man. And I want to go back to Antoine Hubert and also to unfortunately, Jules Bianchi. I mean, this poor kid is 21 years old, Charles Leclerc. He's had to deal with his mentor, Jules Bianchi, dying. He's had to deal with his father dying last year just before he announced he had the Ferrari contract. And now a very good friend of his. I mean, the mental capacity of this kid, Gary, at 21, is quite extraordinary.
Well, I think you mentioned he's losing his father. I think he still went out and won that GP2 championship, GP2 Formula 2, whatever it's called these days, but the same thing. But yeah, and even at that stage, you've got to say you take head up to people like that can get out there and perform when they've struck adversity or adversity struck them somewhere along the line. Yeah, he's just been a cool customer. I think there were times this year when I thought he's made a couple of mistakes and he's pushed too hard. And Baku went off in qualifying. The car was quick there. And the questions are being asked. So this weekend, I think, really sort of said he got into it and did the job there.
He definitely did the job. Let's have a look at some of the pictures of, there he is, and we'll explain why he was pointing backwards, because there's been also quite a lot of, I don't know, talk about it, but that was him with his whole team, Ferrari's first victory, and there, of course, his dedication, I think, to to Antoine Hubert. Everyone raced for Hubert over the weekend. A magical moment for a guy of Charles Leclerc, and winning at Spa. Something very, very special as well. Okay, so we saw that picture there where he was pointing backwards, and there was quite a nasty set of social media that came out after the race going, where was Sebastian Vettel, in the celebration? Why wasn't he standing next to Charles Leclerc? Well, here's the reason.
So finally, my first career win in Formula One. Obviously, it doesn't feel as good as it should be considering the circumstances this weekend. But overall, I'm extremely happy for the team. They deserve it. It hasn't been an easy season until now, but very happy to give the first victory to the team. And apart from that, obviously, since child, when I started first in karting, I was first dreaming of being a Formula One driver one day, and then this year with Ferrari, which was already incredible, and my first career win today. So it's a very good race, and really enjoyed driving out there today.
Just 12 points behind.
Well, the way it's going, the thing is, when you're a young boy like this coming into a big team, you do grow and grow and get stronger and stronger, and it's lovely seeing Sebastian actually at the back there at the same time. So it's brilliant to see that Charles and all the Ferrari crew are there, because I think it's very important for a team to have this sort of closeness, and I think this is a good sign of that.
Stop taking photos.
So there we go. It was actually what Charles Leclerc had to say about his first victory, and then I think admirable from Sebastian Vettel. Vic didn't want to take any of the glory away from Charles Leclerc, but was standing actually in the background. A lot of people missed that. They thought, no, he's gone, AWOL.
I must admit, when I saw the picture, I was wondering where was Seb, but now I know where Seb was, and I think I think it's indicative of the man. I think he realised it's his first race win. He wants him to share the limelight. He didn't need to be part of that limelight, and actually it was Charles' weekend, and I think great job from Sebastian.
Now, we're having a little bit of an argument before the show started over here, because these two over here sit and think that Vettel's had his day. Gary?
I don't think he's had his day. I think that the pressure is definitely on him. Leclerc has been quick all year, and I think he's arrived. Look, he's won Ferrari's only race this year.
Yes.
Vettel is the guy that's supposed to be fighting for the championship.
Vettel won in Canada.
He did win in Canada.
Sort of. But, the points don't show it, and the history books don't show it. But yeah, look, I think Sebastian Vettel, when everything's going well for Sebastian Vettel, it's all hooked up. He's going to be hard to beat, and nobody's going to beat him. But I just think they don't have everything just the way he needs it. And I think it's sort of becoming sort of evident at this stage in his career that he needs things to be working as they need to be for him to do well. I
think very valid points. Also, the fact in the last 6 races, Leclerc has out-qualified Sebastian Vettel. And Carlos Sainz, I think it was Carlos Sainz this week, came out with something interesting and saying Vettel shouldn't really worry about the Saturday, because, Saturday in qualifying, anybody can put in a humdinger a lap. But he's got to be more worried about the Sunday because he's getting out-raced.
The thing that just impressed me about Charles Leclerc was there were certain times in the year where Sebastian Vettel out-qualified him, and then he came out and said, I need to lift my game. I need to understand what Sebastian is doing to get a hold of him. And now for 6 races in a row, he's out-qualified Sebastian. Similarly, in the races as well. I think it was Hungary where Sebastian came and passed him, and then Charles Leclerc after that said, no, I've got to figure out what Sebastian's doing to look after the tires.
Yeah.
So he's able to learn. He's got the capacity to learn. But Sebastian is not gelling with the car. It doesn't look like he's happy with the car. It looks like the car's too much front end. So, there's rumors that he likes a rear end that's planted on the ground. So when he puts the power down, he's confident what's happening there. So Charles Leclerc he's gelling with the car 100%. And maybe it's just an old dog can't learn any new tricks at the moment. I don't know,
Not a chance. Don't write off my Sebastian Vettel just yet. There are some people who have too much time on their hands. Let me just adjust this a little bit over here. And I remember reading many years ago, I don't know if you guys ever read it, there was something about President Lincoln and President Kennedy. And President Kennedy was in a Lincoln when he was killed, and Kennedy was at the Lincoln Memorial. Something crazy like that. Somebody has, thankfully, gone out and put a similarity between Charles Leclerc and Michael Schumacher, which is quite amazing. Don't forget, both of them won their first Grand Prix at Spa. So I'm just going to read it to you. I know if wherever you're watching it, it could be difficult. It says, Leclerc won his first Grand Prix at Spa-Francorchamps. The last time a driver won their maiden Grand Prix at Spa was Michael Schumacher in 1992. Here are some interesting similarities. Listen to this, guys. Both drivers won their first Grand Prix in Belgium in their second season in Formula One. Both had failed to finish their first Belgian Grand Prix due to issues on the opening lap. We need some of that mood music here. Do, 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 do. Listen next. In second place was the World Championship points leader. At that time, it was Nigel Mansell. This time, Lewis Hamilton. Both drivers are British, utterly dominated the season, and had 8 wins up until that point. In third, it gets crazier. In third place was the championship points leader's teammate, Riccardo Patrese, Valtteri Bottas. Both drivers were second place in the championship and had 5 career wins at that point. In fourth place was Michael Schumacher's teammate, and that was Martin Brundle at the time. This one was Vettel for Leclerc. Now listen, it gets more freaky. Britain's Johnny Herbert retired on the final lap after an engine failure, but was classified as he completed 90% of the race. The same happened to Lando Norris in the 2019 race, also from Great Britain. 18 drivers were classified in both races. I don't know what you're reading to that, but I mean, it's pretty freaky.
So what you're saying is Ferrari's on the doorstep of great success.
Well,
Leclerc goes to Mercedes-Benz.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, something like that. Who knows what it's going to be now. Now, of course, this weekend it is back-to-back races. We go to Monza. Now, we all, for many, many years, the three of us used to sit in the studio and we used to watch the race, and we used to ask what in TV terms you say, please turn the fold back up so you can, start enjoying the sounds and excitement of a Formula One Grand Prix. Vic, what is your sort of ritual when it comes to a race, before a race?
Get the family out of the living room, turn the volume up as loud as you can get it, and have a couple of drinks and eat on the ready for you. Yeah.
Gary, anything?
So where's the remote? Where's the remote? Yeah. Be quiet. Be quiet. No, okay, you got to go. Just go upstairs. Watch upstairs now.
Yeah, something like that. Well, I mean, most of the time I'm doing it with a whole bunch of other people as well, but also trying to turn the TV up as loud as possible. But when you're in a crowd of people, there's a lot of times I just put headphones in. Earplugs, so that I can actually listen to the commentary.
But that's when I came to watch with you, you should have done that for me too, because I couldn't hear anything. And it cost me a couple of $1,000 to buy everyone drinks the whole day. So, and we used to get paid to do it. Now it costs us a lot of money to watch a Grand Prix now.
Money as well. Well, the thing about it is everyone knows traditionally the 5-minute board. 5 minutes before the start of the race, that's when the TVs go crazy and then the music comes in. And Peter, who's our director this evening, and thanks for helping us out here, Peter. We managed to get Peter to get into somebody's, they're sort of townhouses, so they're next to each other. And just before the start of the Grand Prix last weekend, and this is what happened.
I'm kind of going here at the bottom.
I mean, I just love it. I think it's very fun. Some proper moves there from Danny Ricciardo. That was his Red Bull days.
Yeah, you don't do it anymore now.
Yeah,
it's got all corporate.
It's got all corporate.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all
Employee
changing.
of the month.
Yeah, all changes as well. Okay, let's move on a little bit in the show and let's talk a little bit about engines and the engine debate. Vic, I want to bring you in here. The penalties that we have in Formula One when it comes to the engines. I mean, is it justified? Number one, to have 3 power units, sorry to use the word engines, power units for a whole season of 21 races. Next year we've got 22 races, and we're still going to have the allocation of 3. And then all of a sudden, if you have to take another engine, sorry, you're right at the back of the grid.
Yeah, I think that's been the issue with Formula One for the last couple of years. I understand they want to reduce costs, but I think with this era of the engines that we have now, the IC part, the actual ERS parts, the guys understand the technology. And it's not a huge difference between 3 engines and 4 engines. You're going to find at this particular race, and even at the last race, guys took new engines. They decided to take engines strategically. They'll take a penalty because it's easier to pass. Red Bull's taking their new engines because the Singapore Grand Prix is coming up, and that's where they've got a great chance of winning. And I don't think that's racing. I think at the end of the day, allow the guys to use what engines they need. I get it. In the past, I think in the early 2000s, guys had a qualifying engine and then a race engine, and the engines only lasted 100 kilometers or whatever the case is. But, these Formula One engines are unbelievable feats of engineering. But I think it's just a travesty that a team has to pay for an engine manufacturer's issues. If you look at McLaren now, they're demanding understanding from Renault what is happening with our engines, why are we failing. And it sounds like very similar to what we had last year and the year before with Red Bull. Correct. So we don't want these penalties. We want the guys to race. If you're a 4th fastest team or 4th fastest car or even on pole, you don't want the pole guy to go to the back of the grid. You want the race up front. Yeah,
I do agree with that sentiment. Gary, also the one thing that concerns me about this is, for example, if the guy, one of the drivers gets involved in a crash, free practice 2 or 3, and they're pushing like crazy, and they crash in, and the rear of the car gets damaged, and now all of a sudden the gearbox gets damaged, now they have to replace it. All of a sudden they get a penalty for that. That I find just unfair.
Yeah, no, look, as Vic says, you can't understand what the thinking is behind it, but I think it's crazy. You're spending so much money anyway, so to go nail the guys and now put them at the back of the grid and to take away an opportunity like that, I mean, it doesn't. For me, it's never really made sense. Remember those days when we had guys getting 50 place penalties for whatever.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah. Engine parts were breaking, or whatever it was. It's just crazy. You know what I mean? But I mean, again, it goes back to the whole thing. You're trying to save money, but you're racing with the most expensive engines that have ever been in Formula One, in the history of Formula One. So I don't know.
Okay, so at Spa this past weekend, we had Mercedes who put in a brand new Spec 3 engine into Robert Kubica's car. Ferrari put a Spec 3 engine into Antonio Giovinazzi's car. And who started at the back? Gasly started at the back. Albon started at the back with Honda Spec 4 engines already. But amazingly, Kubica's engine completely exploded, and Giovinazzi, there seemed to have been a problem as well with the new spec engine. Yes. Going into this weekend, where you're 90% on the throttle, Vic, are Mercedes and Ferrari concerned?
Well, they were. And I think the issue was Ferrari did come out and say they didn't choose not to use the engine and use it in Giovinazzi's car as a test bed. They just said it was a strategic decision. However, my understanding is they will take the new engines this weekend, and Mercedes, after that failure, had to turn the engines down. They were not quite sure. At least it goes to show that they don't have all the answers. However, you've got to say that at the Monza Grand Prix, it's probably the hardest track for engines.
Yes.
And Ferrari want to win. Mercedes can't afford to have a DNF, or maybe they can with Lewis Hamilton. He's so far in the lead. But we just want to see good racing, and we know that Max Verstappen is going to take an engine, so he'll probably start at the back.
He's going to start at the back
because it's a strategic decision. So we're actually being robbed of nice racing.
Yeah, I mean, Verstappen's at the back, Gasly's at the back, Lando Norris is at the back. Let's go back a little bit to McLaren. I think we've got image 8 there, Peter, if you can bring that up. Both McLarens failed this past weekend, Gary, and Vic touched on it with Renault. You and I last week spoke about Renault. We don't want to go on there bashing Renault. But, if you're McLaren, you're sitting there going, what is going on? Look how well the McLaren is going. And all of a sudden, they're not doing anything. Renault go out there. Hülkenberg had a terrific race, got into the points, yet their customer team, unfortunately, has these expiries. Is it Renault's issue or is it McLaren's issue?
Well, who knows? It's all got to do with the packaging. Is there something that the McLaren have done that the other teams haven't done that's causing the problems? All these, there's so many things you've got to look at and understand. But the fact that they're asking Renault would imply that they think it's Renault's fault. The problem is for them, they can't go back to Honda right now. So, like Red Bull have got, they've swapped the Renault for the Honda engine. So it's going to be tough for them. And I think you also said the word, their customer. You know, to have McLaren, it's the norm now. But you know, when would you ever believe that McLaren would be a customer engine team after having what they've had in history?
Yeah, and also, you know, when you sat there and you went McLaren, Honda, I mean, what a fit if you go back to the 80s. And unfortunately, it just it didn't work. All right, now we come into something where I want to bring this up because I do not agree with the stewards at all. Who was to blame? Kimi Raikkonen gets shunted out of the way by Max Verstappen. Verstappen did this not last year, the year before. I think he took Vettel out in the same kind of thing. And the stewards say, no, it's a racing incident. I mean, there you can see Raikkonen's on 2 wheels.
Well, the steward's Dutch. I don't know. I've spoken so highly of Max Verstappen. This season, the guy, he's just, in my opinion, the top driver out there. But the guy just lost his head. Vic, he knows he's got a fast car.
Yeah.
You're at the longest track. You know you're going to have opportunities to overtake. And you can you can hardly ever win a race you could win the race in the first corner, but you can lose a lot of races in the first corner.
Yeah.
Your take on that incident?
Maybe I'm not as harsh as you are, put it that way, but you know, I do think he should not have. Can we say put the car where it was supposed to be?
The Alfa Romeo has got 2 wheels on the actual tarmac, which is the racetrack.
But if you look behind Max Verstappen, I think there was I think it was Lando Norris. He basically took almost exactly the same line as Max Verstappen. I just think Kimi did not see Max there because Kimi was 2 cars away. Max went to the inside, and then Kimi came across and took his normal line. At the start, you know that there's going to be a guy on the inside. Just leave the room. And I think at the end of the day, it is a racing incident.
Vic, Gary, what are track limits? Does your car have to be on some part of the black stuff?
So for me, it's irrespective of the track limits. I think the fact
Spoken like a driver.
Verstappen braked too late and couldn't stop the car to get the car turned for the corner. That's really, for me, how I saw it.
Okay.
He had turned in, committed to the corner, and Max drove into him.
Max took him out, messed up his race. I mean, the Alfa Romeo was 6th on the grid.
Yeah, you know, I think it's unfortunate because it ruined a good race. And I really wanted to see how Max and Albon were going to stack up in the race. And that's what we didn't get to see.
Very good point.
We saw what we saw, and I think we're going to talk about it just now. But I wanted to see him compare with Max in race conditions.
Look, I also thought, in my personal opinion, looking at the entire weekend build-up, that the Honda would have had, or Max would have had good race pace. If you looked at Sebastian, if you looked at Valtteri Bottas, I thought he would have probably been a top 3 finisher. So, you know,
it
screwed up
very
his race.
unfortunate. You see, Chris here on our social media, that's not the racing line. There we go. I agree with you. Thank you, Chris. There we go. I'll send you a prize or something like that. Okay. Let's just go back to the Belgian Grand Prix race results. Okay. And then from there, let's talk about some of the incredible performances. The one we've got to talk about, of course, Alexander Albon, Red Bull Racing, first race for Red Bull, finishes 5th. And if you sit there and take, you know, the 2 Ferraris and the 2 Mercedes, next best is Red Bull. Verstappen wasn't there, and he's maximized. I mean, you've got to say, phenomenal performance. But I'm going to throw this to you, Gary. Was it that great? What did you take of his first race?
So I think the race was good. He managed to pass people and in quite spectacular fashion as well. Didn't get caught up and got the job done from that point of view. I think the fact that he had the softer tyres in the second part of the race, when the track was rubbered in, the car was lighter, for sure it was going to give him a message of advantage. So the team, himself, obviously played the card that they were dealt for the weekend, started the back, started the harder tyre, and used that quicker tyre to full effect at the end. So it would have always been difficult to see. But I think I just got on the overtaking. At the end of the day, he did what Red Bull wanted, and it was they have a second driver that can take points. And he maximised the points.
Yeah.
And I think for me, if you looked at the Hungarian Grand Prix, if we just cast our minds back, the reason Max Verstappen lost that race was Mercedes had a free pit stop. Pierre Gasly was missing in action. He would normally have been in that spot where if Hamilton took the pit stop, he would have come out behind Pierre. And I think that was the last straw that broke, that basically caused them to say, let's make the change. And I think Alex Albon, for his first race, no testing, bit of simulator work, got in there. I think free practice 1, he was a 10th of Max Verstappen.
Yes.
So that tells me the guy can drive, and from what we've seen, he could pass. Initially, in that first stint, he was on the soft tyre, on the medium tyre, didn't pass many people, but when he had the tyre offset, he could pass the guys.
Okay, and now we go to Monza and you think, oh, we're going to see it. No, we're not, because Verstappen's going to start at the back. So
all these damn penalties again.
Penalties. Going crazy as well. Got to say, both Danny Kvyat and Pierre Gasly. Gasly did a great job the whole weekend, out-qualified Kvyat, but then in race, Kvyat got it over. But both Toro Rossos, so I mean, 3 Hondas right up there as well. And the one guy I want to ask your opinion on is Nico Hülkenberg. He's lost his drive at Renault. He's such a good racer. If you were the boss of Haas and the boss of Alfa Romeo, because let's be honest, Giovinazzi's not performed.
No.
He's very well liked in Italy, as we saw yesterday in the parade. But I mean, if you are Haas or Alfa Romeo and you're looking at to replace Grosjean, Giovinazzi, and you and Nico Hülkenberg, if you're Nico Hülkenberg, where would you prefer to go?
Well, I think depending on who offers me the drive, I think at the end of the day, I think that's what it's about for me. The problem right now is you've got all these youngsters coming in. Look at Albon, look at these guys. They're all so quick immediately. Lando Norris, they're lightning. So you kind of like also toss up. You've got Hülkenberg has had a good career in Formula One. Maybe certainly if it does stop, would have stopped maybe a bit short, and you liked it to have gone a bit. Well, he is a talent. There's no doubt about it. But you maybe look behind you and say who else is coming through the ranks. But at this stage of the game, you've got to believe that Haas would be a good bet. For him. Who knows what's happened with Grosjean there. I think the team needs a shake-up with the drivers. They've had their drivers since they arrived in Formula One. It would be good for them to put somebody else in one of their seats.
See, my take is, if Haas offered Hülkenberg, let's say, at least a minimum 2-year deal, then of course you've got to jump at it.
Yeah.
But if they offered him a 1-year deal, and Frédéric Vasseur from Alfa Romeo says, I'll give you a 1-year deal as well, I would sit there and go to Alfa Romeo. Sit there and go, work with Alfa Romeo, try and then take over Kimi's role, and then, of course, you hopefully bring a Mick Schumacher. I mean, Antonio Giovinazzi, we've got to talk about him. Vicky, unfortunately, he's not doing what Kimi Raikkonen's doing.
100%. And I think that if you looked at last weekend's race, it was driver error. And I always cast my mind back. I think was it last year or the year before? He got that break to, I think, drive the Sauber as well.
Yes.
And I think the Melbourne Grand Prix, he was pretty good, decent result. But the very next Grand Prix, I think it was in China, in Shanghai, and then he spun the car, put it in the wall, and that was the end of him. So I don't think that he's shown speed, but I think at the end of the day, he's not maximizing the car. Kimi Raikkonen is showing him how it's done. And the reality is maybe it's time for somebody else to get in that car.
Yeah, and Kimi's there just having a tremendous amount of fun. Gary Lando Norris, I mean, this is a special driver. Besides the fact that he's so incredibly fast, he's got a great sense of humor. He's brilliant all over social media, has a tremendous amount of fun. How long can McLaren hold on to him? Because surely everyone else is looking at this young kid.
Well, they certainly must be looking at him, and I think they've got to get that engine situation sorted out. Look, they've done some great work this year.
Yes.
And they've really got themselves going. Norris has been outstanding, qualifying wise. Certainly, I think he's been better than Sainz. Sainz has just had better races throughout the year. But the guy's so young. What a talent! You know what I mean? There's actually no reason to rush. Find your feet and see what happens.
It is really a special pairing in Formula One, Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz. All right, let's get into something quite technical because Vic is here. Vic, what is rake?
I think I use it in my garden every day.
That's what I use in my garden. Here we've got a picture on the screen, and that is, if you can see closely, you can see the different lines of what they are depicting as rake. What does it mean and what does it do?
I think the important thing is just to understand where it was pioneered, in terms of using excessive amounts of rake. And I think that's all cars use some degree of rake. But we've noticed it in the past sort of 4 or 5 years, if not a little bit longer, pioneered by Red Bull.
Okay. Is it now, before you carry on, is it the height of the car above the ground?
Well, it's the difference in height between the front axle and the rear axle.
Okay.
So if the rear axle is higher off the ground, you say the car's running more rake. And if the front is low and the rear is high, it runs more rake. But what happens with the rake is sometimes when you have too much rake, when you brake into a slow speed corner, the car really doesn't have rear end grip.
Okay, because it's too high.
It's too high. And it creates like a moment that the car comes around. The driver doesn't like that rear end instability. However, the Formula One guys have now tried to get it where they've got a bigger amount of underbody aerodynamic grip by running the higher rake, but it's difficult to get it right. So you see each car trying to mimic what Red Bull does. Red Bull has a sort of handle on pretty much everyone else.
Yep.
They're able to run this rake and to generate the downforce. Therefore, they can run at Spa and at Monza with very, very skinny wings, but still get through Sector 2. And all the other cars are trying to get there. The only team that doesn't really run a lot of rake is Mercedes. And their car's not very slow either. So they won many, many, many championships. So it's a design philosophy, an aerodynamic design philosophy pioneered by Adrian Newey with Red Bull.
Okay.
And if we can get that across all the cars will be much, much faster. They'll look after the tires. Red Bull is very good at looking after its tires. But again, it's how good your aerodynamic team is to maximize that.
There we go. So now I know what rake is. Okay, let's take you to our Throwback Thursday moment, something that happened at Monza quite a long time ago. All right, so there we go. That's our Throwback Thursday moment. Don't give it away. Don't give it away just yet. Those are the two pictures. You've got to try and tell us. Let us know on our Facebook this evening, or otherwise even on our Twitter. What was that incident, and when did it happen, and what happened there afterwards? It was a very significant weekend in the history of Formula One. Okay. Now, let's have a look at our driver standing so far for the championship. I heard Toto Wolff come out today, Gary, saying Bottas is free to race against Lewis Hamilton for the rest of the season. I mean, if you sit there and think about it, Lewis has got the championship. I think you work it out. Valtteri has to win every race, and Lewis can come second, and he can still win the championship.
Almost three Grand Prix behind him.
Yeah.
So it's a big gap. And look, kudos to the team. Let him race, but he's first got to get up to Hamilton.
100%.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Looking at, but there's a great scrap for third.
Correct.
Verstappen, Vettel, and Leclerc. I mean, Leclerc's only 12 points behind his teammate.
I think Verstappen's going to finish second in the championship. I think he's going to beat Valtteri Bottas.
Sure.
And I think Charles Leclerc is going to finish in front of Sebastian Vettel. So far, we haven't seen Vettel giving us any indication that he's got on top of it.
Leave Vettel alone.
Wait, I'm just stating the facts.
You guys. Okay, yeah, listen.
If Max beats
Bottas.
That's big.
Yeah.
That's
for Red
huge.
Bull, for Honda, for Max himself, it's huge. So go Max.
I say go, Max, 100%.
Okay, listen, before we look at the circuit, and we'll get back to our Throwback Thursday moment, I don't know, we were talking a little bit before we started the show. Last night in Milan at the Piazza del Duomo, they had the celebration of 90 years of Essere Ferrari. And they could only get 10,000 people in there. I mean, it was jam-packed. It was an incredible celebration, and Ferrari just took out, spared nothing. I mean, they had the cars on there from the 50s all the way up to Schumacher's car to the latest car as well. Everyone was there except 4 people that I could count that weren't there. Fernando Alonso, Jody Scheckter, Mika Salo, and Rubens Barrichello were the 4 drivers that weren't there, besides, unfortunately, the drivers that have passed on. But it was an incredible atmosphere that took place there. And I was quite concerned that Jody Scheckter wasn't there, you know, because we're South African and, you know, Jody's our man, and we, you know, I expected him to be there. You know, it's 40 years since he won the World Championship. But Gary, you got some good news for us.
Yeah, so our friend Mark Woolley, he's actually over there with Jody at the moment, and they've got his World Championship winning car at Monza this weekend as part of the 40-year celebrations. So the car's going to run on Friday, Saturday and Sunday, so a couple of high-speed laps. So yeah, making a big deal out of that as well. So I think an event that just started off as merely bring the car to the track. From what I'm led to believe, it's turned out to be quite a big show, and a lot of interest shown in that part of it as well. So looks like it's going to be a great weekend over at Monza, and possibly a track that we should be at right now, watching the Grand Prix. It looks like a really good one.
You know, Scuderia Ferrari were very, very clever. They put out about an hour ago. They put out a letter, which is signed by Charles Leclerc and Sebastian Vettel, and it's basically for you to give to your boss. To basically say, please excuse Sasha Martininga from work and any activities this weekend, he has to be at Monza, which I think is a great event. But it's going to be a huge celebration, regardless whether or not Ferrari win or not. It's a massive weekend for Ferrari, 90th year since the existence, or since they started. Jody Scheckter will be there. I'm so glad to hear. I know that Alonso, Vic, is going to be there, but he's going to be with McLaren. And I'm trying to think, why would Alonso, Mika Salo, maybe not so much, but Rubens Barrichello, besides maybe having other, maybe they're doing something else.
Other commitments. But it's a big commitment to miss, you know. I think
exactly.
You kind of spent a big portion of your racing life with this team. You would think that they would make every effort to be there.
Yeah, Eddie Irvine was there looking as cool as ever. But for those who maybe saw it, you would have seen what happened. But I must tell you, when Kimi Raikkonen went up on the stage, you know, because he was champion in 2007, the crowd went crazy. The same for Mick Schumacher. When Mick Schumacher went up there, and they did do something special for his father. But when Mick went up there, the crowd was just, you know, screaming, "Shoo me, shoo me." It was very, very emotional. And I think Italy's quite pumped up. If they don't win,
I was just going to say,
if they don't win, do not pass go, just fly straight to Singapore and stay there.
So we're just saying no pressure. Yeah?
The last time this is a significant Grand Prix, it worked out in their favour. So who knows what's going to happen this weekend?
Let's see. Okay, let's take you back to our Throwback Thursday moment. So let's look at those two images, image 12 and 13 again, Peter. And then, of course, we will give you the answer. Okay, I think he's just trying to find those. There we go. That's, just hold that picture there, Peter. Vic, Gary, remember this?
I do remember this.
You do remember? Yeah. That was Jean-Louis Schlesser taking out Ayrton Senna at the Ascari chicane. That's what happened.
And that would have been, in the end of the year, 16 out of 16 wins. And
correct.
They got 15. Yes.
All right, so then the next picture, let's have a look at our next picture. That's Gerhard Berger with Michele Alboreto behind them. So the year was quite significant. That was 1988. And I think the significance about that Grand Prix and what actually happened, and Vic got it right. McLaren, the MP44 in the hands of Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna was just one of the greatest Formula One cars ever made.
What engine did it have in the back?
A Honda.
A Honda.
Okay. And it had won every single Grand Prix up until this race in Monza. A month before the Monza race, Enzo Ferrari died. And there, you know, everyone was incredibly sad. Ferrari didn't have a chance at Monza, but, you know, the Tifosi was still out there. And by pure fluke, Jean-Louis Schlesser takes out...
And that was Schlesser, I think's only Grand Prix.
Only Grand Prix.
Group C driver. Now, who was out of the car? Was Mansell or Patrese?
One of them, I can't remember who didn't race.
It was almost like somebody had sent Schlesser to the car just to do his job.
Yeah. It was bizarre. And Schlesser took out Ayrton Senna, and all of a sudden it was a Ferrari 1-2 in 1988. The races after, McLaren won all again. They won 15 out of 16 races in 1988. So that's our Throwback Thursday. All right, let's look forward to this coming weekend. Of course, it's going to be all about our tyres as well from Pirelli. That's going to be significant. The weather is going to be quite interesting as well. The one thing before we get into that slipstreaming, Vic, we saw the guys try it in Spa.
Yeah.
Here you've got that massive long straight, as we can see in our graphic. We can keep that graphic up there, Peter. You can see in the graphic coming out of the parabolica and then down the main straight. You've got to anticipate that people are going to try and get some slipstream, considering if Ferrari's that dominant when it comes to straight line speed.
Well, you remember last year Sebastian Vettel was very upset because I think Kimi Raikkonen got the tow from them. And the cars don't need to be right up against the car in front of them to get the tow. They can be quite far back because it's very, very high speeds reached here. Yeah. So you're going to find the guys in Q3, they're going to position where they're going to go. Hopefully we don't see what happened at Spa, where everyone was locking wheels and going around at 5 k's an hour and then suddenly trying to get going. So slipstream will be a massive thing. Obviously, looking after your tires is going to be quite important. Low downforce setups. So I'm looking at a very stunning Grand Prix, and I do think, in my personal opinion, that Ferrari favourites for this weekend.
Favourites. Well, we'll talk about the weather in a couple of moments from now. Gary, the one thing also Ferrari have struggled, we mentioned it also in Spa and a lot of the races, is later race degradation and tyre wear. And last year, Ferrari looked like they were going to be quite strong at Monza, and Mercedes just wiped them clean. They've got to be conscious of this.
No, for sure. I mean, listen, all that homework's been done already, probably weeks ago. So they're going to this weekend, and you just hope you've done the maths right, and hope the temperature works out for you, and it all works good. Right now, Thursday night,
you're not going to do anything more.
You've got to go and get on with your weekend. We'll see what happens on Sunday afternoon.
Well, if we look at the weather conditions yesterday in Milan, which is 30 k's away or 40 k's away from Monza, was glorious. But the rain is coming in. So it's anticipated that there's going to be rain throughout the whole weekend. On Sunday, they reckon it could be light drizzle. Who could this favour?
It favours a fantastic race. If you cast your mind to the German Grand Prix, I think it was probably the best race of the entire year. You probably have to say Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, that type of driver.
I think it gives Red Bull and Max a serious shot here. I think that's what the rain brings, which is great, because you get another car into what should be the top four. Maybe even Albon has a chance at a track like Monza. It's not a hard track, to be honest with you. So, if the car's working and things are working out for you, or you've got a weather condition that suits your car, and your aero in your car, for example, it could end up actually being quite good.
Well, I can tell you it's raining at Monza right now, expecting rain tomorrow, which is all the way through until 6 o'clock. On Saturday, no rain, all of a sudden. Then on Sunday, they're expecting some rain, and the temperature is quite a lot cooler as well. And that's also quite significant.
Yeah, it is massively significant, and obviously the guys have got to decide how they're going to set their cars up, because once you get into Saturday afternoon qualifying, you're not allowed to change the setup of your car.
Yeah.
So you've got to make the judgment call. You've got to decide how you trust the weather. You've got to figure out, okay, let's roll the dice. Max Verstappen is starting at the back anyway. So maybe they call it quite cleverly for the setup, because the reality is he's probably going to end up P5, P4 maximum, unless one of the top guys drop out.
Yeah.
So, might be quite interesting for us.
Okay, well, listen, I'm sure by the next show I'll have this all understood as to how to interact or whatever. But, we're still working on those kind of things. But thanks very much for your time. Gary, this weekend, do you think Ferrari can do it?
I think Ferrari definitely into the shot this weekend. And listen, I'd love to see them do something special at Monza this weekend.
It would be. Vic, same sentiment?
I think same sentiment. I would look for a Ferrari 1-2.
Yeah, Ferrari 1-2 and Kimi 3rd in the Alfa Romeo. That would be great. That would be brilliant. Listen, thanks for joining us here on the PitBox. Thanks for all of your comments. I'll go through them in time, and I will respond, but really appreciate your company. Thanks very much to Peter for doing a great job. His first time ever doing this.
Wow,
hey?
yeah.
Nice. Brilliant, Peter. And also to Henk and everybody else. We've had a great time. Enjoy the Italian Grand Prix, and we'll catch you again very soon on the PitBox. Good night. Ciao, ciao. Excellent. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you.